Harry Potter's wand, Nabiullina, and Russia's economic collapse. This is what we will talk about today. Hello there, I'm Elena, welcome back to my channel Enough of Propaganda. Please like, subscribe, share the information. Let's make truth available for everyone. There will be two parts to this video. One of them is shocking facts, Nabiullina, stagflation of the Russian economy and the war in Ukraine. Just because you haven't been acquainted, this is Elvira Nabiullina, the head of Central Bank of Russia. This is her deputy, Zabotkin, Alexei Borisovich. The second part will be truth about Russia and Ukraine. Part 2, the economy and the war. Hold tight to your chairs, we will talk about Russian economy today. This is exciting topic. You will find out how well Russia is living. This is Russia, great superpower, with lots of oil and mineral resources of any kind, rich country, biggest country in the world. This is what Putin's rule for over 20 years brought to Russia. And this is to Americans. This could be your future, because some of your candidates to be a president are thinking that Putin is smart. This is what smart Putin did to my country, Russia, for over 20 years of rule over Russian people. And I'm not even talking about 700,000 of Russians losses only in the war in Ukraine. This is dead, wounded, and missing in action and captured by Ukrainians. So wonderful. This could be your future. This is something to envy about.
Yesterday, reporters asked me if I thought President Putin was smart. I said, of course he's smart, to which I was greeted with, oh, that's such a terrible thing to say.
Today we will find out how smart is Putin, how wonderful Russian economy is doing. We will have no secrets left unopened. This is, by the way, Russian students going to school in Rostov region. In the Rostov city, by the way, it's not just a region. I remember living in the middle of 1970s in Siberia, where we have to fly by helicopter there, because there was basically just taiga forest and nothing else. And we was going to school in the same kind of mud. So this is Russia today in 21st century. And I remember walking to my school through even more mud than this, and we didn't have buildings like apartment buildings like this at the time. It was just a village which just started to be built in the middle of the forest. During this video I'll show you some photos and videos of Russia. This is actually Moscow. It's not somewhere nowhere. This is Moscow. And this is sewage fountain, the size of as tall as the many stories buildings. And this is right today, basically. Not today, but what? October 28th happened. And before that, in 2022, 2023, I had a video which sewage was broken. Actually, poop was running on the streets of my city of Volgograd, which is 1 million people city. Wow, I'm so proud of Russia. Shocking facts, Nabiullina, stagflation of the Russian economy and the war in Ukraine. Many of you who knows me, and some of you came here from Quora, for example, you know that I'm an economist in the past, who taught in several Russian universities, and you're probably surprised why I'll never talk about Russian economy. That's exactly why, because I am an economist who has taught at several Russian universities. I emphasize, there has been no real economy in either the USSR or Russia. In the USSR, there were constant falsification of data, lies and manipulations, to the extent that the companies, all of which were state-owned, kept two sets of accounting documents, a real one for themselves and a fake one for reporting to the government. The successes of modern economy of Putin's Russia are as much as a lie as the claim that Russia has the second army in the world. All scientific and economic institutions, including well-known global institutes, base their assessments of the Russian economy on official Russian data. At the same time, Russia has classified many data. If the state of Russian economy were excellent, Putin would have opened all the data and published them on every lamppost. The fact that he's hiding all of this means that it's horrible. Whatever happened, Russian economy is exactly this sewage fountain. It's as big and as dirty. However, Even under such conditions, it is possible to learn something about the Russian economy. This post, based on statements of the head of the Central Bank of Russia, Elvira Nabiullina, Professor Igor Lipsitz, and Russian opposition politician Vladimir Milov, the former Deputy Minister of Energy of Russia. This is, by the way, Rostov region, Zaitsevka. And there was no war there. This is not because of the war. Russians are living in these kind of conditions. It has nothing to do with the war. There was no war there. This is their normal everyday life in 21st century. 2024, this is the year when it was filmed and published. Putin has brought us Russians to this point. Even the head of the central bank, Nabiullina, acknowledges the enormous and unsurmountable problems of the Russian economy. A monstrous shortage of labor and catastrophic demographic situation. The inability to attract investments. A rising inflation that cannot be stopped, even by sharply raising the central bank interest rate. Huge difficulties in accessing foreign technologies and equipment. An insufficient level of labor productivity. Issues with ensuring property rights. These are the main problems which Nabiullina underlined as early as in July of 2024. And now, I will talk about it more later, Central Bank ramped up the key interest rate up to 21%. This is the record high. Nabiullina stated that the above problems cannot be solved by distributing cheap loans. She openly admitted that the Russian economy has reached a critical point and faces a number of serious problems that have become unsolvable under the current management approach. So basically, even if the war will be stopped, nothing they can do. It wouldn't help if Putin will still be in power. Here is for you the dynamics of the key rate of central bank. This was 5.5% before Russia invaded Ukraine. Then it jumped to 17. Then another invasion, 20%. And now it is 21. And there is information that probably would be raised until 25, and it's still maybe not gonna be enough. And I've seen it all. When I worked in one of the main banks in Russia in 90s, the rate where people was taking loans for their private necessities was 21-23%. Some of them was even bigger. And people were taking loans under this kind of percentage. So I already seen it happen. Now Putin brought it right back. Here's to you stability for the Russian people who was thinking Putin will bring them stability and a good economy. Wonderful. Exhaustion of resources. Nabiullina effectively stated that all available resources in the economy are exhausted. All of them. This statement is very significant, and it sounds as if resources are not just limited but already completely depleted. In this context of sanctions and economic isolation, against a backdrop of its seemingly abundant external prosperity, full restaurants in Moscow, for example, this acknowledgement is a worrying signal for the Russian economy. This is, by the way, 21st century oil and gas superpower. That was kindergarten and school. And this is their toilets. This is, by the way, Gukova, Rostov region. Let's talk about limitation of potential. Industrial capacities are fully utilized, which means the production growth is impossible, even if money is poured into the economy. Injecting money can only accelerate inflation, but will not increase production. Importantly, the problem of labor resource shortages is also becoming unsolvable, worsened by ongoing military actions, where a significant portion of the working population is engaged on the front, has left the country to avoid participating in the war, or has suffered from the consequences of the war. The government attacks on migrants have led to their mass exodus from Russia. So they are literally getting rid of migrants. And they don't have anybody to work. This woman is saying she is making only 20,000 rubles, and her husband working all day long making 40,000 rubles. So 60,000 rubles they making per month. This is $617 US. together combined. Working all day long, she said, I can't see my son. I'm just at work all day long, every day. And this is what they're making. This is the same Gukova of Rostov region, which was shelling Russia from Russian territory, shelling Ukraine in 2014, when they are pretending that there are some sort of separatists in Ukraine. They shelling Ukraine from Russian territory. And Bellingcat at the time, and I showed it in my video, showed that at least 300 times proven absolutely when the shelling of Ukraine was happening from Russian territory. So people in Gukova didn't care that Russia is fighting war in Ukraine, even back then, let alone now. And now they're complaining that they're living poorly, and they're making very little money, and the economy is bad, and you saw how their village looks like. Stagflation and recession. Nabiullina mentioned the danger of stagflation, a combination of economic stagflation and high inflation, in deep recession, indicating that further economic growth is impossible under the current restrictions. Stagflation is one of the worst economic states, as growth is absent but prices continue to rise. So this is Kurganskaya region. This is how Putin lifted Russia from the knees. They probably crawl the same way to vote for him. Budget normalization. By budget normalization, Nabiullina effectively means they need to cut expenses, including on the war, to cope with the budget deficit. She warns that if this is not done, inflation will remain uncontrolled, and no measures to change interest rates will help stabilize the situation. Official figures in Russia are beginning to acknowledge serious and unsurmountable economic problems that have been hidden beneath the surface of external prosperity. Professor Igor Lipsitz and Vladimir Milov, confirmed Nabiullina's assessment. Lipsitz emphasized that the country's economy is facing a deep crisis caused by the lack of labor resources and rising prices for goods and services. While there is funding for military expenditures, social payments are being cut, making it harder for the population to survive. He compared the situation to the 1990s. Back then, there was hope for a better future despite hardships. But now the situation seems hopeless, and the economy sinks into darkness. I remember that times, and yes, we did have hope. Now, it is hopeless. The proposals of the Russian government to nationalize private businesses could ultimately destroy an economy based on raw material exports. Russia is losing markets even in the arms sector, and it's becoming increasingly dependent on oil and gas revenues. High taxes on gasoline, tobacco, and other goods, which are paid by the population, makes the situation even worse. I quote, "Right now," says Lipsitz, "there is no light at the end of the tunnel, only darkness. Russia will head into darkness, not into light, because companies will be destroyed. Production will collapse. In fact, the economic prospects are very poor. Russia can continue to wage war for quite some time. There will be money for war, but everything else will be destroyed." As I said in a joke, when the son is asking father, "Father, you lost your job, so you maybe will be drink less. I kind of want ice cream and I want some toys." And the father is saying, "No, son, I have money only for vodka." So Putin will find money for the war, but Russian people will suffer enormously. So how will the people of Russia live in this situation? Everyone seems to assume that there is war, there is Putin, there is the army, there are military expenses, and the people will endure. But in reality, it's not that easy. Russia will face a wave of housing and utilities catastrophes. For example, in the city of Chekhov, Moscow region, the situation is such that it is completely unclear whether the city will have heating or not in the winter. The utility workers came out and said, "We cannot turn on the boilers. They will all explode." This is a direct quote from Lipsitz. And as you saw, that fountain in Moscow, the situation is already started to go bad. And this is Moscow. This is not some remote village somewhere outside of Moscow. Russia still lives only on oil. It is a raw material country, poor and primitive. Everything related to final products made in Russia is of little interest to anyone. It is the raw material that matters. Even Russian weapons are gradually losing markets, and Russia doesn't produce anything else. As long as there are revenues from oil, Russia somehow patches the holes. But now we see that the money for the army, but no longer for supporting the population, for education, for healthcare. And you will see soon enough how much Russia is dedicating to education and healthcare. I will tell you later, is in this video or in the next one. The government wants to nationalize everything and recreate a command economy like in the USSR, which will finally kill economic life in Russia. This is just a complete catastrophe. This is the opinion of Professor Lipsitz. And I agree with him. My research proving what he just said. Vladimir Milov. Let's see what he has to say. According to him, against the backdrop of a budget deficit of 3.3 trillion rubles and rising inflation, experts predict an increase in the central bank's key rate to 25%. Investments are concentrated in the defense industry, while civilian sectors suffer from low profitability. The Ministry of Finance attracts record yields on government debt, signaling a crisis. The economy continues to slow down, exacerbated by a shortage of personnel and rising prices for basic goods. People in Russia, according to experts, don't understand the full depths of economic problems. Russia is heading towards the abyss. Even Nabiullina understands that nothing will save the country anymore. Only Putin and oligarchs lived well in Russia. That must be Putin's palace. I actually heard he blew it up, just because he afraid Ukraine will do it and he will look bad. Lipsitz and Milov are Russian economists outside Russia. Let's see what people inside Russia are thinking. This is Sergey Chemezov, head of Rostec corporation. He warned of the threat of collapse of Russian production sector due to the rising key rate. He made this prediction 2 days before Russian central bank raised key rate again. A serious obstacle to further industrial growth is the record level of the key rate. If we will continue to work like this, the majority of enterprises will go bankrupt, Chemezov says. Russia is willing to destroy its economy to continue the war. You're welcome to watch this video. This is what he said. As he said that at such an interest rate, basically all the profit they have is eaten up by the interest we have to pay to the bank. If we continue to work like this, the majority of enterprises will go bankrupt. I have a solution for Russian economy. It's a very simple one. I suggest Nabiullina borrow Harry Potter's magic wand and make it so the war never happened in the first place. So all of the dead come back to life, those who left return, and everyone can work together for the economy of Russia. So basically she's saying, nothing we can do. Inflation is growing, and even if we raise a key rate, it will not help. Yes, they can raise it to 25%, this still will not help. And she said it as early as in July of this year. And nobody working in Russian economy. The people are left country. Some people went to war because right now Russian companies are competing with the recruiting offices who promising a lot of money to the Russians who will go to war. So the company simply can't pay that much salary to the Russians to attract them to work. And they kicked out all the migrants. And migrants run away because they get beaten up, they mistreated, or they grabbed and thrown in the war in Ukraine. So what? They're gonna wave the magic wand and all of a sudden people will show up and start work for Russian economy? Good luck with that idea. He is the Z Patriot for you. For peace, for Russia, for the president. And he said, I'm a patriot. Here he is. But Putin has no intention of stopping or ending the war, which will not help now. It's too late. Moreover, he has shifted the economy onto a military track. It is too late to turn back. The collapse can still be delayed for a while. As long as the war goes on, the soldiers have not yet returned from the front, and the money continues to come from oil sales, as long as the prices do not drop. So forget about the peace. Even if miracle will happen for Putin and Ukraine capitulates, which will not happen, a durable peace with Russia cannot be expected as long as Putin is in power. Truth about Russia and Ukraine. Part 2. The economy and the war. Sorry, I won't discuss Ukraine's economy in detail. That's a topic best covered by Ukrainians themselves. But it should be clear to everyone, even those without an economics background, that Ukraine's economic recovery is impossible without complete victory in the war. Liberation of all its territories within the 1991 borders, eradication of corruption, and establishment of lasting peace through Ukraine's entry into NATO and the European Union. Even General Ben Hodges confirmed that no serious company will invest in a country that is bombed and shelled daily. Of course, some businesses help right now, like the foundation of American billionaire and philanthropist Howard Buffett, which is funding the restoration of the Factor Druk publishing house in Kharkiv, destroyed by a Russian strike. But this is more akin to charity. And this actually Kharkiv, they just was bombed last night. They have day, we have night here in Canada, so anyways. It continues shelling Ukraine every day and Kharkiv every day. My friends are living there, so this is how it looks like now. Ukraine's victory in the war and the clear defeat of Putin's illegitimate regime are the primary essential conditions for the country's survival and that of its people. This is what I can say about Ukraine and Ukrainian economy. As to Russian economy, let's go a bit in depth. This is an additional part for my the part of my video, Shocking Facts, Nabiullina, Stagflation of the Russian economy and the war in Ukraine. This is a great video made by Current Time and Sasha Dubrovskaya, a journalist. So, additionally, due to the rising inflation and economic overheating, this is a quote, the Central Bank of Russia has just raised the key interest rate to 21%. As I said, this is a record high. According to its head, Elvira Nabiullina, this is not the end. Another rate hike is expected in December 2024. The central bank is unable to control inflation. Russia's economy is in deep crisis, exacerbated by sanctions, military spending, and economic isolation. Elvira Nabiullina and other experts warn of stagflation, labor shortages, and exhausted industrial capacity. While military expenditures remain a priority, social services, healthcare, and education are severely underfunded, leading to deterioration living conditions. This will be my summary of the video by Current Time. Ultra-military budget, who will pay for Russia's record spending on the war against Ukraine. And this is median salary in Russia, 59,256 rubles. This is a year, 720,000 rubles. Russian budget overview. These numbers is what Russia will spend on defense, so-called defense, every second 500,000 rubles, non-stop for over 1,000 days. Or every second and a half, Russia will burn the yearly salary of average Russian. So let's see closely what Russian budget will look like for next 3 years. Let's see how Russians military spending looks like for 3 years. So basically, over the next 3 years, nearly 41% of Russia's budget will go to military and security spendings. This includes 13.5 trillion rubles in 2025, 12.8 in 2026, and 13.6 in 2027. An additional 7% of the budget, almost 11 trillion rubles, for internal security forces and police. This is not all. There are hidden military-related costs. War-related hidden expenses further increase the actual military budget. 1 trillion rubles over 3 years to restore Russian-occupied parts of Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson, Zaporizhia in Ukraine. 4 trillion rubles for the transport system development program, including railways in occupied territories and unmanned aviation systems. 800 million rubles for military logistics, road repairs under the regional and local road network program. And another additional costs for signing bonuses for recruits which are impossible to fully calculate due to secrecy, compensation for the dead and wounded, as well as the costs for their treatment and rehabilitation. So total military-related expenditures. With these hidden costs are added, Russia's total military and war-related spending could be even higher than 41% of the budget, significantly more than 6.3% of GDP already allocated to official military and security expenses. Non-military spending. Healthcare, 1.8 trillion. Education, 1.5 trillion rubles. Both sectors will receive around 10 times less than military and war-related expenditures. So who is gonna pay for Putin's war? Russian people and businesses. Who else? A rise in taxes on citizens and businesses will help fund this spending. For example, these utilities, like water, electricity, gas, and waste disposal, will cost Russians more. These services will increase by at least 36% over 3 years. Corporate profit taxes will more than double, from 2 trillion in 2024 to 4.6 trillion rubles by 2027. Income tax on individuals will nearly triple, collecting 1 trillion rubles by 2027. Excise tax on alcohol, 25%, tobacco, 5%, and gasoline plus 40%, and imported goods plus 50% will all increase. The good question is when Putin will run out of money. This is prognosis, prediction, what the prices of oil gonna be. And with oil and gas revenues expected to drop from 27% to 22.6% of Russian budget by 2027, the government may rely on the National Wealth Fund. Most of it is gone, by the way, the liquid part of it. Euros and dollars are gone for sure, and so on. And Saudi Arabia not gonna try to keep the prices high. This is what, according to Russians, left in their Fund of National Wealth, 10 to 12 trillion rubles, which they're lying all the time. If all oil prices fall to $50 per barrel, Russia may deplete the fund currently at from this 10 to 12 trillion rubles by 2027, having already spent 5 trillion rubles between 2023 and 2024. I personally believe it will happen much faster than that, perhaps even by the end of 2024. Russia is lying all the time, so it's not the right number how much money they actually have, for sure. This expanded view highlights that Russia's actual military-related spending is far larger than official figures suggest, as hidden costs tied to the war in Ukraine push military expenditure even higher. Meanwhile, citizens and businesses will bear the brunt of the spending through increasing taxes and prices. And this is during the 7 minutes 34 seconds of the video. Russia will spend on army and siloviki this amount of rubles. So this is to the point how smart is Putin. This is what he did to my country. This is what people who are thinking that he is smart wants to do to yours. Don't let them. I'll provide you some information also so you can look for yourself. What do we have in the end? High taxes and rising utility costs burden citizens, while the government focuses on sustaining the war effort. Despite oil revenue providing short-term relief, the country faces a bleak future with no signs of recovery under Putin's leadership. Economic collapse seems inevitable. This is what I have to say. Learn the truth and stay informed. Thank you for watching. See you later.